Got interested in NMR when I was in London, University College London, and I got a trip to California, big deal, to have a look at one to see if we wanted one at University College. Well, we did want one, and I went out to look at it and negotiate a bit, but that was just before I moved here. London, I was appointed there in 1949. I stayed there till 58 when I came here. But I wasn't using NMR because we didn't. It was only at the end of that time that we looked in getting one, and they got it in the end. But I moved.
Right.
But I moved here on the understanding I would get an NMR machine. The thing I most remember is that they dropped it.
Oh no.
It was going into the engineering building, and of course it was an enormous iron yoke magnet, you know. And they were going into the engineering building. There's a hoist above the back doors, and they were hoisting up there when suddenly it slipped. And it landed on the concrete, and it made a little hole and cracked. And you can still see that today. They patched it up, but you can see where they patched it. But anyway, so we were pretty alarmed, but when we got it operating, it was fine. Well, he worked very hard on the NMR. Well, besides doing a lot of preparative chemistry, of course.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he did use fluorine. I mean, he was one of the people to push the fluorine NMR.
Mm-hmm.
But we had been doing that before. And then we did a number of unusual things. We did selenium NMR for almost the first time, selenium-77. So that was interesting. It was an enormous. We had to rig up special cooling system for it, and it was nothing came with the spectrometer. We had to have a rig up our own. I think Gary was probably partly responsible. Gary Schrobilger was probably partly responsible for that. I can't actually. It's a long time ago now. The spectrometer was quite amazing. The iron yoke, in order to get a uniform field, you used to have a big bar, and you actually bent the magnet.
That's crazy.
to get the field. And then there was a funny, like a galvanometer, which corrected. There was a light beam shining, and it corrected if it went off. They stabilized the current, and it sort of feedback got it back right again.
That's crazy.
So, really tricky.
But I can also remember the first time I ever played with the DP60, I was at the University of Wisconsin working, well, I took a summer course from a fellow called Paul Bender. He's a very brilliant physical chemist. And part of this summer course was to do some NMR and use the instrument. And they had a DP60 in a room with careful curtains and temperature control. And just as Ron said, this monstrous thing here had this little strip recorder with a beautiful red ink pen running up and down this piece of paper. I was plonked in front of the machine, and he said, "There are the gradient controls, Bell. There's the attenuation. Get me a spectrum of acetaldehyde, of the aldehyde proton of acetaldehyde." Well, okay. And then he left. I don't think I've ever been so frightened in all my life. What do I do? Well, I actually found the peaks, and believe it or not, by sheer luck, actually got a nice rigging pattern. At McMaster, not until '64 when I came here. But I had done a little bit back in '59 at the University of Wisconsin. Well, unfortunately, when I arrived at McMaster, John Walkington and David McLean cornered me and said, "Oh, you've done NMR. You can teach this course." And it wasn't until, let me see, '67, I think, when we moved into the new building, and we got our infamous HA100 with passing tubes that put out about 1,000 watts of heat.
Yes,
it was phenomenal, the current running through that thing. We had to duct the heat out of the building, basically. Yeah.
There it is.
John Saunders? Oh, John was a wonderful person. He was an excellent NMR spectroscopist. When it came to making compounds, well, John actually went into the lab, put a few things together, and out popped what he wanted. And I had some other students at the same time, Vincent Taguchi, working with me, and Vincent was very peeved at what John could do. He said, I spend all day getting things organised and it doesn't work. John comes in 2 minutes, he's got what he wants. When John Saunders came, and for some reason I had got interested in the NOE for structure determination, and so John did a lot of the work, and I also did some of the work too, measuring the intensities as you irradiated one proton, what happened to another proton in the same molecule. And the net result of all of this was the infamous paper that basically proved that the dipole-dipole interaction decreases as the 6th power of the distance. But it works, and now you guys use it all the time. Well, I remember giving a talk in London about it, and there was some pretty high-powered chemists in the audience, so I was a bit frightened by all that. Now, the other thing that I also had another student, John Easton, who was at the same time as John Saunders. And I know John Saunders is coming to this. John Easton, we decided we would look at terpenes and other things in the carbon-13. And you want to know how long it took to cool one of those spectra? Like a 50% solution all night. And then we could never correct the baseline, so you've got these mountains, little peaks on hills. I remember a fellow Capi Jolla, who worked for Varian, coming in probably around 73, 74, would it be? And
we got rid of that.
well, it was close to when we were getting rid of the DP60, and it wasn't working very well, so he came in to look at this, and he looked at the thing, and he says, your magnet's crystallized. We have to replace the pole faces.
Oh, really? I'd forgotten that.
Yes. So I watched him tear these monstrous things out. He's an old guy, strong as a...
Oh, but nobody
No,
did solids
no.
in those days. Nobody even thought about solids. They thought it's impossible. Like usually you think, first of all you think can't do it, but somebody has the right idea about it. No, when I started it was almost entirely used for inorganic chemistry, but we did, then the organic chemists started to use
Once
it.
the organic chemists discovered it, it was game over for these guys. So yes, I mean, Dr. McLean used it, I used it, Dr. Hawkinson used it. Yeah, it was Dr. Charles when he came. Yeah, very extensively used. In fact, there's a story, you put an NMR in with a bunch of organic chemists and they immediately want 2. And then they want 3, then they want 4.
Yes, I'll tell you one famous person was George Olah, who got a Nobel Prize. And I remember that he used to bring his sample, he was working in Sarnia for the Dow Chemical or something, yes, I think Dow. And he used to bring his samples over, and they were all black, because he had organic compounds in sulfuric acid that were being chewed up. So I thought, well, how can you get anything out of that, Waste of time, because I like my samples to be nice and clear, keep them cold and so on. And but he found the carbonamide, CH3+.
McMaster?
Well, no. He did that later, but he did early samples here, and he was, getting indications that he was getting that. Still working.
Yes, well, I won't tell you how many hours at night I would spend here.
Did you have to stay with the magnet the whole time that you were running experiments, or could you come and go?
Doing NOE experiments, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, we just had to integrate, and then readjust the field, and then integrate. Get decent averages, So the carbon-13 runs, then you would just try and set it up as best as possible and pray you hadn't forgotten anything. So the next morning when you came in, there might actually be a spectrum there. Well, there was one occasion when we had the A60 was the standard workhorse for the organic chemists. And the probe died, so it was shipped off to Booker in the US, and they fixed it or whatever they had to do, and then they shipped it to Buffalo, and there it sat in Buffalo. So I said, well, I'll go pick it up. So I hopped in my car and I drove over to Buffalo and I picked it up and I rather carelessly just plonked it on the back seat of the car and drove back over the border. And when I got to the border there, the custom guy says, "What's that?" And I said, "That's a probe." "Oh yeah? Let's have a look at it." And they took it off me. I don't know what they thought it was, but they weren't going to let it back in the country. He wanted to see about paperwork. I said, "What paperwork?"
Did you get it back?
Yeah, eventually. In fact, I was sort of wrapped over the knuckles a bit because it cost the university to get a bondsman to pay him and bring it back to the university, because all the idea was to get it back quickly. As it was, it took a few more days. So yes, that was one of the worst episodes.
You have to ask a younger person
Yes,
who's
yes.
full of ideas
Yeah,
on what he
I
might
guess
do,
so.
you see. You're the people who should be thinking about
Oh
that.
dear, who knows? 50 years?